I have the honor to introduce to you our speaker, Linwood Davis, from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where he's practiced law for more than 40 years.
44.
Maybe 44 years. 40 years after graduating from the Duke University Law School. He's also served as the chairman of the Winston-Salem Princeton Association for the past 40 years and has been our 62 class agent in the past, and he's now agreed to be our class agent again for the next 5 years. Not only has he faithfully lived by his tenets of hard work, enterprise, education, faith, and family, but also, having had 4 children graduate from Princeton, this makes him more than qualified to plant ivy here and talk about it. I have the honor of introducing Linwood Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President, and brothers of the superclass of 1962, and sisters and guests. Let me ask, what draws us to this historic place, the south facade of Nassau Hall, hallowed ground in the history of Princeton University and to us as Princetonians in the superclass of 1962? This iconic edifice, the largest building in the colonies at its completion in 1756, was built 10 years after the College of New Jersey was chartered in Newark, the province of New Jersey, in 1746. The college in Newark had no campus. The students boarded in town, and the classes were held at the parsonage of the president, Jonathan Dickinson, who died within a year, and then the classes were at the parsonage of Aaron Burr Sr. Burr was married to the daughter of Jonathan Edwards, the Calvinist theologian, and their son Aaron Burr Jr. was the 3rd vice president of our country, serving under Thomas Jefferson. The college classes were later held in a room above the jail. The trustees sought another location, quote, more sequestered from the various temptations attending a promiscuous converse with the world, that theater of folly and dissipation, close quote. They also wanted a place nearer to the center of the province of New Jersey. In 1753, the village of Princeton obtained from the town of New Brunswick the right to become the permanent home of the college, securing, quote, 1,000 proclamation money, 10 acres of cleared land, and 200 acres of woodland to provide fuel, close quote. Nathaniel Fitzrandolph raised the money for the land, and the trustees voted to accept Princeton as the new location. In 1753, Fitzrandolph and his wife Rebecca gave the trustees a deed for the land. President Aaron Burr Sr. supervised the construction of Nassau Hall and moved to Princeton with 2 instructors and 70 students in 1756. The trustees desired that the building be named for New Jersey Governor Jonathan Belcher, the leading patron and benefactor of the college, who had received an honorary degree at the first commencement in 1748. However, the governor declined the request and asked that it be named Nassau Hall in honor of King William III of England, a member of the House of Nassau. Nassau Hall served as the capital of the United States during the First Continental Congress, and it was occupied by both the British and American forces during the Revolutionary War. The Battle of Princeton in 1777, in the Battle of Princeton, the Americans were forced to fire upon their own building. 3 cannonballs were fired, 1 glanced off the building, and another flew through a window in the faculty room and decapitated King George's portrait. It was said to have come from a gun in the artillery company commanded by Alexander Hamilton. However, a final determination has not been made. The government inquiry is still pending, and the DNA of the cannonball is being analyzed. The first time that ivy was planted by a class was at the graduation of the class of 1877. The ceremony was accompanied by an oration, the Ivy Oration. The orator said that the ivy was chosen as a symbol of the perpetual remembrance that the class would have of Princeton. Striking deep, clean, close, and always green. Past Ivy orators have included Henry Pitney Van Dusen, class of 1919, a churchman and Princeton trustee, and undoubtedly an ancestor of our esteemed classmate, the late Louis H. Van Dusen III, whose grandfather and father were in the classes of 1898 and 1934. Now let us resume with what causes us to keep going back to Old Nassau. We recall arriving here, I'm sure, on that sunny day in September of 1958, fresh-faced and buoyant, with the excitement of finding our dorm rooms, meeting our roommates, buying furniture at Skillman's, hanging the class banner, and signing up for classes and learning our way around campus. Canebrake was our first social encounter, with everyone gathering at Lake Carnegie. The highlight was knocking off the sophomore class in the annual rope tug of war. We repeated this the next year against the freshmen. And these triumphs we identify in retrospect as important indicia of the superclass. Then our studies began. In the classrooms, you may recall that an ashtray was mounted on the back of every seat. Students lit up with careless abandon. The classrooms had radiators and no air circulation. By the end of the lecture, the air was blue haze. The lecturer was just as likely to puff away as the students, often on a professorial pipe. Chapel was mandatory, and in our first year for underclassmen, that rule was soon abandoned. There were no women students, of course, but the occasional woman on class certainly did turn heads. When a student brought a date to the Commons to the Commons dining hall, you may recall, conversations immediately hushed, heads rose in unison, and every undergraduate instinctively raised his spoon and wrapped it in a slow and deliberate cadence until the hapless and blushing young lady could scurry to find a seat. We could not join the eating clubs until the middle of sophomore year. Freshman mixers were about the only social outlet. However, Chubby Checkers was at the Peppermint Lounge in New York City, doing the twist. Now, I never made it to the Peppermint Lounge, but when I came home for Christmas and went to the holiday parties, I was the only one who could do the twist. And the girls thought it was great. They were thrilled. The mothers were aghast, totally put off. They thought my parents had completely lost their second child, gone north to school and off the deep end. So much for undergraduate life. Now let me ask, how have we changed in 50 years? Certainly we've changed with the times, and along with the rest of the population in such areas as race, gender, sexual preference, and so forth. One way in which I'm realizing that I have changed, and I expect that some of you may have experienced this as well, is that now we like each other better. I must confess that I recall having reservations about some of you guys at the time, and when I've come to know you in later years, I found the reservations totally misplaced. The fading of our youthful jealousies, insecurities, and sense of competitiveness has a salutary effect. Well, how has the university changed? When Martha's and my children were here between 1983 and 1995, I was impressed with how the basic education was much the same as when you and I were here. With many of the same courses, even some of the same professors, also the precepts, the junior papers, the senior thesis, all were the same. Of course, the demographics were different, and they have changed even further since. The university has just extended admission for the class of 2016 to 2,095 applicants. They comprise 8% of the 26,700 who applied. The admittees are 47% minority, including 8% African American, 8% historic Latino, and 24% Asian American. The professors here continue the rich tradition of teaching at the university and also roll back the frontiers of knowledge. A recent example is philosophy professor Gil Harmon and several Princetonians associated with him who are developing a discipline called experimental philosophy. This is a method of philosophical thinking that departs from armchair deductive reasoning and takes into account external data from the which include everything from the results of opinion surveys to magnetic resonance imaging and scans. And applying philosophical mindset to the research data, they seek to arrive at universal insights into such traditional concepts as free will, intentionality, and the existence of objective moral truth. When our class was at Princeton, no one gave any thought to training for a working career or the real world, so to speak. This was an idea similar to, the prevailing idea was that liberal arts education will prepare you for anything. And this idea was similar to perhaps inspired by the 19th century British churchman and scholar, Cardinal John Henry Newman, whose writings, incidentally, were the subject of my senior thesis, so I'm showing off. And in his book, On the University, Newman said that the goal of education is, quote, the cultivation of the mind, close quote. When I came to Princeton, my father, a businessman, was fully supportive of the liberal arts ideal. He wanted me to take anything that I found of interest. However, he made one prescription, that I take a course in accounting. There was only one course in accounting at Princeton, and there were no other business-related courses at all. I dutifully took the course, mystified at first, and finally got the hang of it more or less, but have lived to appreciate how accounting opens up the very fascinating world of business. When our children came here, I gave them the same admonition. Take anything you want, but be sure to take accounting. With what is seeming to be a new normal as a result of the national and international economic crisis, reality has required the times to change, and colleges are becoming career-minded. A recent Wall Street Journal article features Wake Forest University in my hometown of Winston-Salem, where students can major in history or some of the liberal arts, any course of their choosing, and a curriculum called Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship is a minor course. This is a 5-year-old program that has become the school's most popular minor. It requires students to learn the practical aspects of starting a business. This is a sign of change in liberal arts colleges, which are grappling with preparing students for the job market while still providing the staples of academic inquiry. I'm not sure how much Princeton may have responded to this challenge. I do understand that there is a course here in entrepreneurship. But I do know that the University of Chicago, where our colleague Don Randall was president until recently, and incidentally he's speaking in the chapel on Sunday tomorrow at 10 o'clock, so I hope you'll come. The University of Chicago is now promising each student a substantive internship in a work environment. At Wake Forest, Andy Chon in the Career Services held a conference last month called Rethinking Success from the Liberal Arts to Careers in the 21st Century that was attended by administrators from more than 70 schools, including Yale and Stanford. John said many career directors are feeling the pressure and are trying to figure out how to get the whole university to get behind this. There's a growing sense that students need experiences that they have not had before.